The Fall of Alla, read by the author. Preface. In 1938, Arno Poebel, a German archaeologist and eugenicist, discovered 3 tablets at the site of the ancient Sumerian city of Eridu in southern Iraq. Carved on the tablets was a story about a simple homemaker who toppled an empire. Poebel published his translation as Das Epos von Atun-Shei, or The Epic of Atun-Shei. My publisher thought The Fall of Alla would be a catchy title, but informally, my colleagues and I call this story Before the Flood, after the epic's first line. There are several problems with Poebel's translation. Sumerian was not as well deciphered in the 1930s as it is today, and the translator's political biases are extremely apparent. He portrays the hero, Atun-Shei, as a hard-working, everyday Aryan who rises up and tears down a tower of Jewish greed and corruption. After the war, Poebel fled to Argentina, where he continued his research for decades. His lifelong ambition was to locate the lost tomb of Atun-Shei and the mythical weapon buried with him, the dagger of Enlil. In 1972, he assumed the identity of a Swiss anthropologist and returned to Iraq in search of it. But in the desert near the ruins of Eridu, he was apprehended by Israeli intelligence. They hanged him in Jerusalem without a trial. For decades, the tablets were on display at the National Museum of Iraq in Baghdad. There were Arabic translations, most notably Usama ibn Mundik's from 1965, but the story remained virtually unknown in the West. The few English speakers who knew of the tablets dismissed them as Nazi fakes. In 1979, Saddam Hussein came to power. The museum was ransacked and Ibn Mundik was murdered, along with many other intellectuals. The tablets were thought to be lost. Then, in 2007, a landlord stumbled upon them in the basement of one of his properties in Erbil, Iraq. Carbon dating found the tablets to be genuine, dating from the 3rd millennium BCE. In the years since, my colleagues and I have translated the epic into English for the very first time, working from HD photographs, as well as the tablets themselves, whenever possible. Each tablet bears the mark of Mescalam of Akkad, a royal scribe who lived in Eridu in the 28th century BCE. If Mescalam did author the epic, then the Fall of Alla is the oldest written story in history, predating the Epic of Gilgamesh by almost a millennium. I believe the story itself is even older than that, as do Sumerologists Dr. Ian Scholl of Dartmouth and Dr. Patricia Baker of Cornell, who graciously triple-checked our translation and gave us some great notes and invaluable insights. I think Mescalam was to the Fall of Alla as Homer was to the Iliad, Scholl wrote in one of his many email correspondences to me. It was his rendition of an oft-repeated and extremely ancient folk tale from the oral tradition. It's highly mythical, bargains with gods and so on, but a lot of the detail actually corresponds with what we know about Neolithic life. Dr. Baker argues that the epic is a window into our prehistoric past. For years, she wrote to me, we thought civilization in this part of the world began with the Sumerians, with proto-writing in the 6th millennium BCE. But now, with Göbekli Tepe and these other sites, we're suddenly not so sure anymore. Mescalam paints a vivid picture of this world that's still half wild, where civilization is the exception rather than the norm. And ultimately, this story is about how the railroad came to town. Both scholars agree that the story takes place in what is today Turkey and Iraq. Baker suggests that given the seemingly accurate description of Neolithic megafauna in the epic, the original story must be 10th millennium BCE or older. Scholl is more cautious and posits the 8th millennium BCE as a more likely date. Either way, the Fall of Alla is shockingly ancient. Beneath the Sumerian polish, a prehistoric fable gives us our first startled glimpse of a Stone Age culture whose existence was until recently considered impossible. Scholl put it best. Elements of this story may very well have happened. Tablet 1 of Atun-Shei's Banishment. Before the flood, among the northern mountains of Subatu, dwelt Atun-Bai, who was a simple homemaker, and his 12 sons. The earth in the north is stony and barren, and they were a poor and desperate people. When it came to pass that the homemaker was kicked upon the head by an ass and died, he had but one son left. His name was Atun-Shei, which means son of creation. Atun-Shei took his father's place in the village. A man is a slave to his hoe, as all know. Without it he cannot feed his children. Atun-Shei worked from dawn to dusk, crafting and repairing hoes. So many hoes that the days and months and years were, to him, a fog of hoes. He could no longer keep track of his orders. Contracts were violated. Threats were made. When it came to pass that the head on one of Atun-Shei's hoes snapped off the body and struck upon the phallus of a farmer with whom Atun-Shei had had a quarrel, Atun-Shei was driven from the village. Because land was not often tilled in the north in those days, many wild people dwelt in the shadows of the mountains. Without knowledge of brick or plough, these savages were more akin to the wolf and the tiger than the man. They can still be found in far-off places. Atun-Shei had not wandered long before he was beset by warriors of the Arasi tribe. They captured him and enslaved him. It was a hard life. The Arasi tilled no land, but wandered the hills, staying in no place longer than a season. They ate berries and nuts when they could find no meat. Atun-Shei was bonded to the hill lord Hethsmet, who used him as an interpreter, and often asked him questions about the ways of civilized people. The Arasi were a religious people, red-haired and green-eyed. They worshipped Iska, the storm god, whom we call Adad. In a dream, Iska came to Atun-Shei in the form of a bull, and told him to lead the Arasi on a pilgrimage to the temple of Anu at the peak of sacred Eka, which still stands today. The Arasi were much amazed by this dream, and wondered what it might mean. After consulting with their medicine men, the tribe decided to depart for Eka at once. Of the journey across the mountains. The journey south was the most arduous of Atun-Shei's life. It was winter. Ice choked the passes. Fanged frost lions snatched stragglers away and dragged them, screaming, to their mountain lairs. Soon they had run out of food. They ate roots and bark, but it gave them no nourishment. The elders and babes died first, then even the strongest young men started to fall. So the medicine men volunteered to treat with Iska in person, to implore him to melt the snows and save their people. They shed their mortal skins, so their she would descend to Irkalla. The grateful tribe did not leave anything to waste. Soon the Arasi were hungry again. It was clear that Iska had hardened his heart against them. When it came to pass that the lofty peak of Eka came into view, topped by the mighty columns of Anu's temple, there were but 6 of the Arasi left, and the great hill lord Hethsmet was sick with hunger, and the others feared he would die. Atun-Shei, who had grown to admire his captor, went ahead of the 6 to find food. The path narrowed, and in a pass at the base of the mountain, a gate blocked Atun-Shei's passage, guarded by a sorcerer called Natsin. Atun-Shei addressed him with the traditional phrase, Atime Peta Bapka, which means, Gatekeeper, open your gate for me. Natsin opened his mouth and said, He who would climb the sacred mountain must first give up a bushel of barley in deference to the emperor. I have sworn no fealty to any emperor, said Atun-Shei. None the less he is your liege, said Natsin. All things that walk or crawl are his to command. Atun-Shei was much enraged. He had not crossed 100 leagues of ice and snow to be taxed, so he took up a rock and flung it at the head of Natsin, which struck him and killed him, but not before the sorcerer had laid a curse on Atun-Shei, a curse that would, years later, prove to be his doom. Of Iska's commandment. Together with the 6, Atun-Shei climbed the mountain. The temple was magnificent, an ancient ring of stones guarded by animal spirits. A score of priests lived there, who fled as the Arasi approached, as they loved their lives more than they loved the gods. Atun-Shei soon saw why. The priests dwelt in luxury, and that night the Arasi ate their fill of fowl, barley, and wild mushrooms. Satisfied, they meditated within the sacred circle, and as they prayed, the face of Iska appeared to them in a storm cloud. The god congratulated them on reaching the temple. "But woe, O 7 sages, for your journey has only begun," he said. "You will sacrifice to me tonight, and tomorrow you will follow the river south, across the sands, and through the cedar forests, to the city of Uk." Atun-Shei was the only one to reply, because Iska does not speak Arasi, nor any barbarian tongue. He opened his mouth and said, "Vengeful Lord, you thunder over the plain, tear trees off their roots with your breath, and yet you also feed the rivers, and moisten our fields with the waters of your body. So have we found succor at last after our long misery. We are grateful, O Thunderer, that in your wisdom you saw fit to spare our lives. But why have you chosen us, Lord, to do your bidding?" "Do not question me, Homemaker," said Iska, and the sky grew dark with his wrath. "Your purpose need not be known to you, but I will tell you this. My brother the sun, whom you call Utu, is angered by your trespass of our grandfather's temple, and will oppose you however he can. Until you reach the forest, you must, like the bat and the cat, travel by night and sleep by day. If you do not, you will surely die. That is the truth." The god disappeared and the sky calmed. The 7 did as Iska instructed, and killed a lamb upon the altar. As they did, they took an oath and drank blood to consecrate it, in the Arasi fashion. The 7 sages swore to reach Uk, as Iska had commanded, or resolved to die. And the 6 swore to follow Atun-Shei, chosen by the god, and fulfill his destiny, whatever that might be. Of fire and water. So it came to pass that the 7 sages came down from the hills and into the desert. Utu's revenge was fierce. The river boiled like water in a cauldron. The sand burned their feet through their sandals. When their sweat hit the ground, it burst into flames. They were saved only because they heeded the storm god's warning. When Utu's boat pulled the sun down into the underworld, they walked. When it emerged from the Apsu in the east, they made camp. One night, Atun-Shei saw a boat in the river. The Arasi, being a simple people, had never seen a boat, and Atun-Shei had never seen one of such size and grandeur. The captain was Ostropaces, which means river rat, whom we know today from our children's stories, the old explorer with the flowing white beard, and the crew made up entirely of virgin women. After exchanging gifts, Atun-Shei told Ostropaces of their quest. Ostropaces marveled at his story. He claimed he had been to the city and seen the great throngs, the spires, and the ziggurats. "I have seen what the emperor is building there too," he whispered. "They say he has ascended into godhood, and his army of slaves erects a great tower that will stretch into heaven. Once all is complete, he plans to challenge Enlil for the throne of the universe. There is more. The gods are divided on the matter. Enlil has many enemies among them." Atun-Shei was much disturbed by this news, and wondered which side he was on. Ostropaces offered them free passage to Uk. It would take half the time as by land, he said. They could leave the desert and forego the cedar forest. Atun-Shei happily agreed. They boarded the boat, and in so doing deviated from the path set out for them, which would bring upon them calamity and destruction. When Utu rose from the east that morning, he looked down upon the face of the earth and saw the 7 sages upon Ostrapaces' boat. Enraged, he besought his twin sister Inanna, whom we call Ishtar, the morning and the evening star, for aid. The Lady of Heaven took the form of a hippopotamus and attacked. Inanna took the boat into her jaws and snapped it in two. The defense of the virgin crew was in vain, and they died in the swirling current. Hethsmet, the hill lord, was nearly snatched away by the monster and devoured. Ostrapaces and the 7 sages crawled sputtering ashore. Atun-Shei rent his clothes in sadness, for their food and armaments were lost, and the country around them was barren and forbidding. At this, the Arasi reprimanded him, and reminded him of his oath, so resolved were they to continue the quest. Ostrapaces was greatly angered by the loss of his boat, and in a rage tried to kill Atun-Shei, but Hethsmet stopped him. "We will all be dead by nightfall," Ostrapaces wailed. "This is Talal, land of the giants. It is a cursed land, an abode of evil. Here Ereshkigal is worshipped. Here the earth gapes open, and the dead crawl out. The land of Talal is a stony, misty place, and even unto this day travellers lose their way and meet death there." Atun-Shei was paralyzed with indecision. Would he follow the river and face the wrath of Inanna, or cross the mists and confront whatever doom lay there? So it came to pass that at this point, Tablet 1 breaks. No one knows exactly what happens next, but Shoal and Baker both agree that Atun-Shei chose the landward route. Tablet 2 takes up the story in the temple of Ereshkigal at Gudua, 40 kilometers west of the river as it ran in prehistory. It appears Atun-Shei did come face to face with the giants of Talal. In fact, a giant named Nafatim accompanies Atun-Shei's fellowship to Gudua and becomes their trusted friend and advisor. Shoal postulates that perhaps Atun-Shei bested Nafatim in combat by way of some clever trick, a common theme in mythology, and earned his respect. There are some inconsistencies between the tablets, which have led to speculation that they were written by different authors. Shoal believes Mescalam wrote tablets 1 and 2, and that tablet 3 was written centuries later. Baker disagrees, citing the distinctive writing style running through the whole of the epic. She believes all 3 were carved during Mescalam's lifetime and under his supervision. In the intervening scenes, Ostrapaces has left Atun-Shei's company. It is unclear why, though he will appear again later in the tale. Tablet 2. Of the Gift of Nafatim. The doors of the house of Ereshkigal opened for them, and in the courtyard they came upon a cauldron, 30 cubits tall and 50 cubits wide, full to bursting of sweet golden beer. In those days only gods and giants drank beer. Nafatim filled an enormous jug, taller than a grown man, and presented the 7 with straws as long as skin boats. The giant opened his mouth and said, "Drink, my friends, taste the water of the gods." "Do not," warned Hethsmet. "It could be poison." "Poison is not a giant's weapon," said Atun-Shei, and drank. It was the sweetest thing that had ever passed over his tongue. He asked Nafatim for more, and more still, and soon became exceedingly happy, and his face shone. So it came to pass that mortals first tasted beer. It was not long before the 7 sages were fast asleep upon the temple floor. In Atun-Shei's dream that night, Iska appeared in the form of a bull-headed man. The god revealed that the homemaker would be tested before his destiny was fulfilled in the city of Uk. "Deep in the cedar forest you will find the cave that breathes, called Kath in the old tongue," he said. "Inside there is a gate to Irkalla. You must pass through this gate, homemaker, and defeat that which dwells within." Atun-Shei opened his mouth and said, "But, dread lord, it is forbidden for a living she to return from the land of the dead." "I know this, you need not remind me," Iska said, "and to that end you must make sacrifices to the Queen of Death, in whose house you sleep, and do as she commands." Finally, Iska rebuked Atun-Shei for diverting from his prescribed path. You heeded me not, homemaker, and nearly brought about the death of all your companions, for which you are to blame. And now you have tasted beer, and learned things which mortals were not meant to learn. Thus, I will punish you with a splitting pain between your ears upon your waking. Iska's word became law, and so it has been ever since. The gods broke the sleep of the 7 sages, who were exceedingly sick. Atun-Shei told them of Iska's punishment, and all that he had said concerning the cave that breathes. Hethsmet grew white in the face, for he too had dreamed of such a cave that night. He opened his mouth and said to Atun-Shei, All 7 of us stood at the mouth of the cave. You went in first and were unharmed. When I tried to follow, my phallus split open, and a locust flew out. All agreed this was an extremely unfavorable dream. I will tell you the meaning of your dream, said Naphatim the giant. Your phallus is your body, and the locust is your she. It is a sign that you and your kin cannot move freely between the worlds. The homemaker must enter Irkalla alone. Of the union with the goddess of death. Once their sickness had passed, Naphatim showed the 7 sages to the inner sanctum of the temple. Atun-Shei poured fine meal upon the altar and offered it to Ereshkigal, whereupon 7 temple harlots lit 7 fires in 7 stone pits. The chamber filled with crimson light, and they heard the voice of the goddess rise from 7 throats. You are welcome, 7 sages, to my hall. Your offering is good. What do you desire? Atun-Shei opened his mouth and said, Exalted lady, fair Ereshkigal, queen of death, goddess of Irkalla, the storm god has commanded me to enter the cave that breathes and pass through the gate of Kath. I humbly ask your leave to enter your realm, your protection from the dangers that lurk there, and an assurance that, when all is done, I may return to the mortal world. Ereshkigal laughed and said, You ask much, homemaker. To cheat death is a power no mortal has achieved. However, your purpose is noble, and I have decided to help you in your quest. But if I give you such powers, I expect more in return than a simple offering. You must present me with the seed of your body, and fill my wombs with your joy. Atun-Shei balked at her words, since such unions with gods often end badly for mortals. Hethsmet lifted his eyes, and beholding the beauty of the harlots through whom Ereshkigal spoke, stepped forward. Let me face the peril, my lord, he said to Atun-Shei. No, said the Queen of Death, it must be the homemaker. So it came to pass that Ereshkigal made Atun-Shei her consort. 7 times did he spill his seed, once inside each of her aspects, and in so doing she imbued him with great power. She gave him Enki's intelligence, so he could learn the secrets of creation. Inanna's strength, so no mortal could withstand him in battle. Utu's justice, so he would know right from wrong. Ninhursag's mercy, so he would reward virtue in others. Nanna's wisdom, so he could divine the movements of the stars. Enlil's majesty, so men and women would follow him willingly. And Anu's creativity, so he could help usher in the next age of humanity. Thus rejuvenated, Atun-Shei prepared to depart from Gudua. The 7 sages pleaded with Naphatim to accompany them to the cave that breathes. He refused, but gifted them a skin of beer for their journey. Ereshkigal took Atun-Shei by the hand and said, My brother Iska is stubborn. Tell him to go east, and he will go west. Tell him to eat, and he will fast. Tell him to drink, and he will abstain. He thinks it is dangerous for you to know your destiny, and has sworn to keep this knowledge from you. I have made no such oath. Truly, I tell you, a battle is coming, a battle of gods and of men. Alazul, whom you call the Emperor, challenges the rule of Enlil. His tower in Uk grows taller by the day, and soon it will reach heaven itself. You are destined to stop him, It is you who will bring down his tower. If you do not, all humanity will join the ranks of his army of slaves. The 7 of you will change the world. Defend Enlil, our father, and your rewards will be great. Once all is accomplished, 7 kingships will descend from heaven to 7 cities. Claim them, and your lines will rule, unbroken, forever and ever. Of the prophecy of doom. So it came to pass that with full bellies, full skins, and a new sense of purpose, the 7 sages plunged into the thick groves of the cedar forest. They travelled swiftly, stopping neither for food nor rest. In 3 days they travelled as far as a mortal man can walk in a month. So it came to pass that the 7 sages stood at the mouth of Karth, the cave that breathes, nestled among the tallest cedars in the wilderness. Setting eyes upon the cave, Atun-Shei was seized by terror and dread. Ereshkigal's blessings had strengthened his arm, but the knowledge she had given him weakened his resolve. He knew that his passage between worlds would change him, and feared he might not know himself when all was done. Hethsmet, seeing Atun-Shei's pale cheeks and drawn face, grasped him by his shoulders. The lord of the Arasi opened his mouth and said, "Gird yourself up, brother, and go down manfully into the pit. Remember your boasts to the river rat and to the giants. Mortals cannot resist destiny, no more than we can change the movements of the stars or stop the passage of time. Even if you turn away now, destiny will bring you back here. March forward, Iska's chosen, and do not dishonor us." Atun-Shei was greatly moved by his words. He bade farewell to his companions and descended into the darkness of the cave. Karth is a living thing. Its breath came on the wind and struck his face. The rock expanded and contracted around him, and the ground beneath was moist and soft like a tongue. The caverns were utterly dark, and grew darker as Atun-Shei ventured deeper down Karth's throat. The air stunk of sulphur and decay. Scorpions and scarabs scuttled underfoot, and the voices of ghosts, in primeval tongues unspoken for eons, whispered gruesome tales into his ear. At length, Atun-Shei came before the gate of Akkala. One lonely spirit kept the gate. It was not Nettie who greeted him, but a lesser gatekeeper, a shade the homemaker remembered well, Natsin, the sorcerer, whom he himself had slain. Natsin opened his mouth and said bitterly, "How long have I waited for this moment? Woe unto you, homemaker, for in your haste to climb sacred Eka, you did not think to grant me the proper burial rites, to prepare me for my journey. The crows pecked out my eyes, the wolves tore at my carcass. To a wandering she such as I, an hour in the mortal world lasts 10,000 years in Akkala." "I grieve with you," said Atun-Shei, "but I must cross this threshold. Do not attempt to stop me, for the Queen of Death has bestowed upon me great power, such as you could not hope to withstand." Natsin laughed and said, "Everything is impermanent, everything. Meat rots, love fades, mountains fall and valleys rise, rivers go dry, yea, even Anu's creation itself will one day be devoured by chaos. Look at me. In life I was a great man. I served the emperor well. He blessed me with his favor and invested me with his authority. Then I met you. You are puzzled now, but this is because you have never before wielded true power. When you become king, you will understand. Do you remember the curse I laid upon you? Of course you do. It was a curse of retribution, that you might suffer the same fate as Natsin, cut down ignobly at the height of his power. But it will be worse for you. You gave life to the one who will end yours. He who would have you dead shall be of your own flesh, and those who do the deed will be those whom you love. So, homemaker, think of me as the bowstrings snap, and when your she returns here, I will be waiting." You may pass now. Enjoy your visit to Irkala. Of the descent into the netherworld. Exceedingly disturbed by his words, Atun-Shei crossed the threshold and dove through the murky apsu between the realms. He emerged unharmed, by the grace of Ereshkigal, and gazed over the sepulchral plain of Irkala. Spirits surrounded him, translucent and glowing, like damp lapis lazuli. He recognized great kings and heroes of old, noble Lugalbanda and Ashum-Pere, the Lion of the South. Among them also were the people of the Arasi who had died in the mountains, and the medicine men who had offered themselves to Isker. Hethsmet, your lord, yet lives, Atun-Shei told them, as do 5 other Arasi who have become my friends. A glorious destiny awaits them at the end of our quest. The spirits of the Arasi were much gladdened by these tidings. They bore Atun-Shei away to the river of blood, which runs under the Euphrates, and there he was much surprised to see the shades of Ostropaces and his virgin crew stood upon the deck of their ghostly boat. Atun-Shei opened his mouth and called Ostropaces by name, and said, "By what evil fortune do you find yourself here?" The river rat spoke. "Some days after we parted, I was making water into the river. The same hippopotamus that ate my boat sprung out of the reeds and bit off my phallus. I was wounded, inconsolable, and alone, so I weighted myself down with stones and leapt into the deepest part of the river. Do not pity me, for now I am reunited with my crew, my boat, and my phallus. All is well again." Atun-Shei was much amazed by this story. Ostropaces explained it was his lot in death to ferry souls to the ziggurat of judgment, where the Anunnaki hold court. "And that is where I must take you now," Ostropaces said. "But I am not dead yet," said Atun-Shei. "Ereshkigal gave me her word I could come and go freely." "That is for the Anunnaki to decide," said Ostropaces. Then Atun-Shei remembered the words of Isker, and realized his great test was taking shape. Of the trial of Atun-Shei. The sails were full, though there was no wind, and soon they reached the mighty ziggurat of judgment, greater and grander than any found on earth, even unto this day. Of solid gold is it made, and adorned with precious gems the size of houses. Legions of heavenly watchmen, the shades of the holiest warriors who ever lived, guard its stately spires, and it was they who led Atun-Shei from the boat and into the grand audience chamber of the Anunnaki, the high court of the universe, where all of destiny is decided. Atun-Shei lifted his eyes and beheld the gods upon a high dais of the smoothest onyx, seated upon bejeweled thrones. Glimmering crowns adorned their glorious heads, and shimmering robes flowed from their perfect bodies. Among them were Inanna, ferocious in her beauty, radiant Utu clutching his fiery spear, wise Nana deep in thought, crafty Enki, maker of men, Ereshkigal, heavily pregnant, seated next to the dark lord Nergal, her consort, and above them all sat the warrior Enlil, lord of the land, king of the heavens and of the earth, inventor of the hoe, father of the gods. Nergal was the first to speak. "Honored lord, mighty Enlil, this mortal has no place in my hall. The hybrid creatures that grow within the wombs of my wife are his adulterous work." "This hall is not yours, husband," said Ereshkigal. "You will know your place." "It is you who should know her place, mistress," said Inanna, the morning and the evening star, to the Queen of Death. "It is because of you that the Homemaker is here before us now." Her brother Utu, the sun, agreed. "The order of the universe is out of balance. Glorious Enlil, it is Ereshkigal we are to judge, her and her ally Isker, for they have allowed the Homemaker to desecrate Anu's temple, and worse, they have given this mortal knowledge he shall share with others of his kind." "We have other worries," said Nana, the moon. When I rise in the evenings, I see the lights from the fires of Ook. More numerous than the sands of the riverbanks they are. I hear the mattocks and the chisels, the slap of brick on brick. The power of Alla grows, and soon he will be ready for war. Give mortals too much knowledge, and we will have 1,000 Alla, said Inanna. I cannot believe the goddess of war would fear a mortal homemaker, said Ereshkigal. Silence, you gravid she-dog, cried Inanna. Say another word, and I shall tear you limb from limb, and devour the whelps you carry inside you. Chaos gripped the Anunnaki, and all the gods shouted at once, until Enki opened his mouth and said, Enough! Our master wishes to speak. The gods quieted, and so it came to pass that Atun-Shei heard the voice of Enlil, the Almighty, Lord of the land, King of the heavens and of the earth, inventor of the hoe, father of the gods. Enlil turned to Ereshkigal and said, Do you doubt my power? If I wish to destroy Alla, I need only imagine him destroyed, and it would be so. He challenges my rule only because it is part of my grand design. Then he turned to Inanna and said, You are wise to fear the mortals, but it is too late, my daughter. What is done cannot be undone. The time is near when all mortals shall possess me. This too is my will. He then addressed Atun-Shei, and his terrible voice blew like a gale and shook the walls of the chamber. Homemaker, prepare yourself. The test Iska spoke of is upon you. Should you succeed, you will be my champion for all time. Should you fail, your unworthy she shall be cast into the Apsu and obliterated, and you will know no more. Atun-Shei heard the beast before he saw it. Its heavy paws scraped across the stones. But divinity, he said, I have no weapon. If you truly are my champion, said Enlil, you will not need one. The horrible head emerged from the shadows first, its long plaited beard dragging along the floor. Hate blazed in the pits of its eyes as it unfurled its great wings, which stretched twice the length of Ostrapacis's boat. Its finely muscled body, which was that of a lion, seemed to have no end. The beast fixed its gaze on Atun-Shei, the gaze of death. Iska, patron, thunderer, save me! Atun-Shei cried, his terror being exceedingly great. Iska is not here, Inanna said from the dais. You are alone. The slavering jaws of the beast spread wide. Atun-Shei held up his hands and cried, Wait! Do not eat me! The beast blinked. Why not, little man? It said. I am poisonous, said Atun-Shei. Devour me, and you will surely die. You lie, snarled the beast, though there was a countenance of indecision upon its idiot face. I would never lie to one so magnificent and ferocious as you, said Atun-Shei. My grandfather was a scorpion, and I carry a deadly venom within my flesh. The beast laughed deeply within its throat. I am Lamassu, little man. The scorpion is a delicacy to us, and its venom does us no harm. The beast lunged, but Atun-Shei was nimble, and evaded its bite. Then consider this, he said. You are great and terrible, whereas I am but small and weak. I could never defeat you in battle. Eat me now, and everyone will say you are a brute and a coward. Who says this? What are their names? The beast demanded. None yet, but they shall, said Atun-Shei. They shall say Lamassu only hunt the easiest of prey. That is not true, the beast protested. Not at all. I have heard that the Lamassu are not only great warriors, but cunning as well, said Atun-Shei. The beast smiled. That is true. Then I challenge you to answer a riddle, said Atun-Shei. Guess correctly, and you may eat me. Guess incorrectly, and you must return to the abyss. I love riddles, the beast said. I accept. After a moment, Atun-Shei said, I am a house. One enters me blind, and exits me seeing. What am I? The beast's huge face wrinkled in painful thought. A house, blind, seeing, it said. Do you yield? Asked Atun-Shei. "No," it roared, "I am thinking." Then the beast grinned, and full of confidence, it said, "I have it. You are a temple. One enters ignorant of the gods, and exits full of wisdom." "Close," said Atun-Shei, "but incorrect. Is not knowledge of the gods innate to everyone? No, my foul friend, I am not a temple. I am a school." The beast cursed, then it disappeared, swept from existence upon the winds of logic. Of the Blade of Power. Enki, the maker of man, erupted into joyful laughter, descending from the dais. "Well done, homemaker, well done. You have earned your keep. Now take your reward." With that he drew a mighty weapon from his belt, a blade without equal, then or since, forged from rock that had come down from heaven, affixed to an ornate hilt of solid gold by a silver cross-guard in the likeness of a giant's skull. The greatest weapon ever wielded, it sliced at the lightest touch, and pulsed with righteous magic. It was the famed dagger of Enlil. "A warrior armed thusly cannot be defeated. Take it," commanded Enki, and as Atun-Shei laid his hands upon it, he was transfigured into something more than mortal. His body grew stronger and more beautiful, his eyes grew sharper, his reach longer, his ears more attuned. Glittering golden armor bedecked his front, and a golden shield was slung across his back. Gone was the homemaker, in his place was a king. "Now you must leave this hall, and travel to Uk," said Enlil, the father of the gods. "Slay Al-Azul, and bring down his accursed tower. Tread lightly, Atun-Shei. The man you call the Emperor is the most formidable enemy you shall ever face. His mind is very great. He sees things before they happen. He is half god, but fear not, for so are you." So it came to pass that Atun-Shei ascended from Irkalla and re-emerged into the land of the living, where only moments had passed since he descended down Karth's throat. When he climbed out of the cave and encountered his companions, they were filled with fear and wonder at the sight of him, and dropped to their knees in supplication. Atun-Shei bade them rise. "Do not be frightened. It is I and no other. I have passed the final test, and Enlil has made me his champion. Now it is time to do what Enki created us to do. Follow me, my stalwart Arasi. Prepare to brave dangers with me, my sages, for now we go to Uk, where our destinies will be fulfilled." Tablet 2 ends on a cliffhanger, which is somewhat atypical of ancient literature. Mescalam was not the only Sumerian scribe with a flair for the dramatic, far from it, but as Baker puts it, the epic feels as though it were written yesterday. There do not appear to be any missing scenes between tablets 2 and 3, but that doesn't prove they were written concurrently, Scholl claims. Tablet 3 is exponentially longer and more detailed than 1 and 2, which for me is a dead giveaway that generations have passed, each adding their own details to the old story. Baker disagrees. "I think the tale grew in the telling, and the change in tone can be explained by Mescalam finally letting his hair down and flexing his creative muscles. In Tablet 3 he expanded upon the oral tradition himself, whereas before he was simply transcribing." The opening scene of Tablet 3 breaks away from Atun-Shei's point of view for the first time. We finally meet our antagonist and get a sense of the dangers that await our heroes in the city of Uk. Tablet 3. Of the Emperor. At this moment, beyond the forest and across the plains, behind the strong walls of Uk, at the zenith of the lofty tower that stretched near to heaven, Al-Azul, whom mortals call the Emperor, felt a disturbing ripple in the fabric of destiny. "My master, your fists are clenched and your brow is furrowed," said Dekaru the builder, who was the Emperor's principal architect and most loyal vizier. "What troubles you?" "Dear Dekaru," Al-Azul rasped, Our enemies have received a great boon this day. We must be watchful. Dekaru scoffed. Let them come, master. An army could not breach our gates. What harm can 7 men do, even if they are favored by the gods? Hubris is a weakness, my friend, said Al-Azul. Double our patrols. Send word to the overseers. The slaves must have no respite. Work them night and day. I will not allow our plans to unravel, not now, when the tower is so nearly complete. It will be done, my master, Dekaru the builder said, and took his leave. Al-Azul peered down into the city, where his slaves lived, toiled, and died. He whispered an incantation, and his she flew out over the strong walls, across the plain and into the forest. He hovered over the 7 sages and observed their movements. Enlil's champion travelled swiftly, and it would not be long before battle was joined, but Al-Azul resolved to wait, to bide his time until the last instant, whereupon he would spring his trap, a great weapon built by men to enslave a god. Of the road to Ook. So it came to pass that the 7 sages left the forest, and came upon the road to Ook, the first ever built, which is not far from where Kish stands today. The path was smooth, the going good. After their trials in the wilderness, the 7 sages made miles with great ease. Nearing the city, they passed by the lumber camps and stone quarries of Al-Azul, spurred on by the whip-cracks of cruel taskmasters. Hundreds of slaves felled cedars of 200 cubits in height. They chiseled blocks of 4,000 shekels in weight. They loaded the fruits of their labors upon sleds pulled by furry elephants, bound for the city. Never before had construction of this scale occurred anywhere. After some leagues, the 7 sages caught sight of the tower of Al-Azul in the distance. Its height was superlative. Taller even than the great ziggurats of the Nile in our day, it stretched into the clouds, so high that its top could not even be discerned. The knees of Atun-Shei buckled as he beheld it. He prostrated himself in the dust and cried out to Enlil, "Father, forgive me. I know the tower must come down, but I cannot deny that I am astounded by its beauty." The voice of the King of Heaven drifted into his mind. "Mark me, champion. The tower you shall build will be 10,000 times as tall. It shall stretch to the face of Nana and beyond." Of the battle with the Venderlin. The further they travelled, the taller the tower loomed over them, until at length they came within sight of the strong walls of Ook. Atun-Shei looked with his eyes, and saw a company of soldiers marching toward them. "Conceal yourselves," he urged the Arasi, and they darted away to hide in the tall grass of the plain. As the soldiers passed, Atun-Shei saw that they were men of the Venderlin, a tribe so savage they cannot be considered human beings, for they were more barbarous than even the Arasi and other primitives of Subatu. The Venderlin could ingest neither fine meal nor cooked meat. A thick and hairy people they were. Even their women wore beards. They stood a full head taller than human men, and their physical strength was prodigious. Long ago, before Enlil invented the hoe, the Venderlin were great in number. It is exceedingly fortunate for us that they have since disappeared from the face of the earth. These Venderlin carried city-forged spears, and hide shields the size of doors. Feathered leather helmets adorned their heads, and thick greaves and braces protected their massive limbs. "They are mercenaries of the Emperor," Atun-Shei murmured to his fellows. Hethsmet pointed to the back of the column. The soldiers had with them a prisoner, bound with cords and nets, a captive who stood far taller than even the most formidable Venderlin. "It is our friend Nafatim, the giant," Hethsmet said. Atun-Shei saw that it was so. "They are taking him to the city. This must not be." With that the 7 sages sprung from the reeds, and Atun-Shei drew the mighty dagger of Enlil from its sheath. Utu's glorious rays caught upon the unbreakable blade, and a brilliant light shone into the eyes of the accursed Vendelin, blinding them for a crucial instant. The hill lord Hethsmet, loosing a loud war cry from his lips, hurled his spear overhand. Inanna was with him, and the spear found its mark. 10 of the Vendelin were skewered upon its point. The Arasi closed into the melee, swinging their clubs and thrusting their spears, and with every blow the blood of their enemies flowed in torrents. Then brave Atun-Shei, champion of Enlil, swung his magnificent dagger, and cleft 20 Vendelin heads from 20 Vendelin shoulders. He cut Naphatim free from his bonds, and the giant attacked fiercely. He trampled the savages underfoot, and crushed them in the vice of his enormous fist. Thus, the company of mercenaries was utterly vanquished, and the road was slick with their viscera. Atun-Shei opened his mouth and said to Naphatim, "My friend, your great body is gaunt, and your face is the face of one who has travelled far and suffered much. Why are you here, so close to the nest of our enemy?" Naphatim bowed. "Gracious Lord Atun-Shei, Enlil's champion, beloved of Eresh-Kigal and Iska's chosen, I have indeed travelled far and suffered much. My lord, I am exceedingly glad to see you, for I must warn you of an insidious plot. Al-Azul knows you are coming. He watches your every move. You are walking into a trap." Atun-Shei thanked him for his warning, and decided that they would approach Ook in disguise. Al-Azul seeks 7 men, so we must part ways for a time. Hethsmet and I will enter the city through the western gate. The rest of you will enter from the east. The tower will be our rendezvous. He turned to Naphatim the giant. "My friend, you are a true warrior, but if you come with us, you will give us away. You should return to Telal." Naphatim wept from his eyes and said, "Would that I could. When I returned home from Eresh-Kigal's temple, I found the village burned and my people butchered by none other than these vile Vendelin. Inanna's rage took hold. Parched for vengeance, I tracked the killers to their camp. But the Vendelin are smarter than they look. I confess I underestimated them. They captured me and planned to hang me in a cage over the walls of Ook, where all would marvel and say, 'There is Naphatim, the last of all the giants.'" Atun-Shei spat upon the corpses of the Vendelin, and ordered the Arasi to pluck out their eyes, so their she would wander sightless for all time in Irkalla. "Noble Naphatim, you will have your vengeance. So the Vendelin did unto the giants, so we will do unto the Vendelin. I only ask that you stay hidden until we infiltrate the tower, then you may do your worst. Come now, friends, we must take to the reeds before more enemies arrive." Of the night before the reckoning. So it came to pass that they left the road and made camp in the tall grass. No fires were lit. No one spoke except to reiterate their plan. As Utu descended into the western mountain, Atun-Shei poured a measure of beer onto the ground in offering. He opened his mouth and said, "Great gods, grant us favorable dreams, for tomorrow we fight our final battle." Above them, the windows and arrow slits of the tower of Al-Azul flickered with firelight in the dusk. Atun-Shei dreamed a dream. He dreamed he woke up in his hut in Subatu, with hoes to repair and contracts to be fulfilled. He dreamed his quest had been the dream. Outside, the village was exactly as he remembered it. He had never been so glad to see it in his life. His neighbor was stretching leather over a tanning bed, which made a noise like the stretching of bowstrings. Then Atun-Shei felt his heart break, and the gods broke the sleep of the 7 sages and of their counselor Naphatim, who was the last of all the giants. Of the city of Ook. The dawn was grey. Rain came down in a drizzle. The 7 sages wrapped themselves in their cloaks, and pulled their hoods over their heads to conceal their faces. Atun-Shei and Hethsmet bade farewell to their companions, and made their way to the western gate of strong-walled Ook. There they joined the vast crowd of common folk seeking entry, which gaped at the magnificence of the city, the first anyone had ever seen. Vendelin archers manned the battlements, and alabaster likenesses of Lamassu defended the gates. their terrible gaze fixed upon the horizon. Atun-Shei shuddered at the sight. Atun-Shei looked with his eyes, and saw a brace of Vendlin guards searching the goods and garments of those who would enter the city. "My friend," he said to Hethsmet, the hill lord, "if the Vendlin search us, they will find our weapons, and we will surely be discovered." "How else shall we gain admittance?" Hethsmet asked. "If we attempt to scale the walls, they will kill us with their arrows." Atun-Shei knew it was so. Battle may be upon us sooner than we planned. So it came to pass that with sweat beading upon their faces, and weapons of war visibly bulging from their cloaks, Atun-Shei and Hethsmet came before the Vendlin guards of Ook. The Vendlin looked them up and down, and grunting in their language, waved them on without a search. Relieved, Hethsmet said, "By blessed Isker, fortune is with us. Let us hope it is with the others also." Atun-Shei ran his fingers through his beard. "I sense a darker purpose at work," said he. "Remember the warning of Nefertim. Stay vigilant." They walked through the great market of Ook, where bejeweled merchants sold exotic wares from across the world, and past the high street saw a far different scene, the work camps of the slaves of Al-Azul. A host of wretches the slaves were, mirthless and skeletally thin. Forbidden to associate with free people, they stared blankly from their miserable hovels at passing fortunates, following them with their eyes, silent in their hate. Atun-Shei wept when he saw them. That morning's drizzle became a driving rain, and Isker's thunder sounded in the firmament. Beyond the dwelling places of the slaves, they came at last upon the tower of Al-Azul. Atun-Shei reached out and laid his hand upon the wall of its base. Malice pulsed from every brick. The tower was not a tower, he realized, but a cemetery. How many bondsmen lay buried within these high walls, Atun-Shei wondered. He felt their restless she call to him through the stone, caught helplessly between the worlds, bound to Al-Azul even in death. A deep voice cut through the pounding rain. "Welcome, homemaker. Welcome, hill lord. My master is expecting you." Dekaru the builder lay in wait behind them, flanked by 20 Vendlin soldiers, armed and armored head to toe. Atun-Shei reached for the dagger of Enlil, but it would not budge from its sheath. The fearsome weapon's aura of white magic had dissipated, and would not avail him. "Enlil has no power here," vile Dekaru said. "Come, it is time we mount the steps. My master wishes you to be present when the last brick of the tower is laid." So it came to pass that Atun-Shei and Hethsmet entered the tower of Al-Azul not as conquerors, but as prisoners. The steps were endless, and in ascending they grew short of breath. From the arrow slits they saw the city grow smaller and smaller below them, until its people were as ants, its ziggurats as anthills. Then they ascended into the clouds, and could see the city no more. Of the fall of Al-Azul. In the clouds they were in the midst of the storm. Thunder shook the walls, and lightning illuminated the stairway, casting monstrous shadows upon the stone. The ascension took the better part of the day, so high was the tower, and by the time they reached the top, Utu had vanished, and night had fallen. Then the steps ended, and the Vendlin prodded them into the grand audience chamber of Al-Azul, whom mortals call the Emperor. Of red and of black stone was the throne room built, flanked by columns adorned with demonic carvings, and at its centre a stepped dais bore up the throne of their enemy, and behind it a massive round casement of translucent obsidian. The Emperor turned from the casement to face them. The crimson eyes of Al-Azul, dimly visible in the shadows, bore into Atun-Shei's own. The Emperor had the appearance of a frail old man, hooded and cloaked, but Atun-Shei felt immense power coiled in him, a gathering of black magic unparalleled in its enormity. A creeping smile spread across the lips of Al-Azul, and he said, "You have done well, Lord Dekaru. Where is the blade of power?" The builder tore the dagger of Enlil from the baldric of Atun-Shei and presented it to his master. A fine weapon, homemaker, Alla said, but it is nothing compared to that which I am about to unleash. He spoke to Hethsmet. I sense you wonder the fate of your Arasi friends here, Lord. Fear not. They are going about your business. Even now they rouse my slaves to rebellion. It is of no consequence to me. I no longer have need of earthly possessions. Let the city burn. Tonight the last brick of the tower will be laid, and I will ascend at last into godhood. You see, it was I who allowed the 7 sages entry into strong-walled Ook. I who shaped events from the beginning, so destiny could bring about this very moment. You know it to be so. I set the gods against each other with the force of my will. What are mortals to me but playthings for my amusement? It must be clear to you now that you have failed. Your situation is hopeless, and further resistance is futile. But I do not wish you dead, neither you nor your Arasi friends. Enlil has promised you lands, riches, kingdoms of the earth. Join me, and I shall give you so much more. Power over the movements of the stars, over the fabric of destiny, over death itself. Submit yourselves to me, and I will make you my Anunnaki. Atun-Shei opened his mouth and said, Do you think our loyalty to the gods to be so feeble that we would betray them for empty promises? No, Emperor, we would fight you even if there was nothing in it for us. We shall see, said Alla. Lord Dakaru, open the cupola. Dakaru barked to the Vendelin, who took their places at the levers of a huge windlass behind the stairway, and as they heaved, ropes as thick as giants' legs pulled the ceiling above them in twain, exposing them to the howling wind and open air. They were so high up they could see the ends of the earth, and had they reached up they could have plucked the stars from the sky. Above them, Atun-Shei saw a lesser tower built atop the great one, its spire topped by a rod of forged copper. Down the length of the lesser tower was a glistening black gem, the size of a boulder. Alla opened his mouth and said to Atun-Shei, This is my ultimate weapon. From here I can control the winds, the waves, and bring down the storm at my command. Atun-Shei was much afraid, but his voice was defiant when he said, Only my patron, the Thunderer, has such power. Indeed, Alla said. That is why I made him my servant. Iska, come forth. At his words, a cloud in the shape of a bull appeared above them, and from its great phallus sprang a rod of lightning. Its bolts shot down to the black gem. It crackled and glowed, and all the colours of the rainbow flashed within it. Alla cackled with laughter and clapped his hands. There was a single small opening in the wall of the lesser tower. Dakaru the builder brought forth a brick and a bucket of mortar. He climbed the steps to the gem, and laid the brick, as his master called out an incantation of unspeakable evil. As soon as the last brick was laid, lightning shot from the gem and swirled about the body of Alla. He grew taller, and his wrinkled face twisted further with wickedness. The lightning took the form of bats that fluttered around him, scarabs that scuttled over him, and serpents that slithered dutifully at his feet. Tears formed in the eyes of Dakaru, and the Vendelin soldiers drew back in terror. Behold, Dakaru said, the newest and greatest of the gods. How do you feel, my master? Alla held his hands up, and as he did, the fury of the elements poured from them. His Shi expelled from his fingertips a javelin of fire and lightning and ice. It impaled Dakaru the builder, whose flesh slowed off his bones, dripping into a bloody puddle upon the floor. Then his skeleton collapsed to dust. Glorious, Alla said. He faced Atun-Shei. Now is your last chance, homemaker. I have seen your fate. You will suffer betrayal, then a pathetic death. Such is the reward you may expect from your beloved Enlil. Do not forget the curse of Natsin the sorcerer. Only through me can you change your destiny. Atun-Shei grew pale, and his hands trembled. He knew his enemy spoke the truth. Hethsmet, seeing this, said, Do not listen to these evil words, Atun-Shei. Your destiny is to destroy Al-Azul, not to join him. Behold, Homemaker, the chieftain of your murderers, Al-Azul said of Hethsmet. It is he that shall loose the fatal arrow. I speak the truth. You know it to be so. Magic unfurled from him, and the dagger of Enlil shone with white light, its powers restored. Take up your great weapon, he said. Destroy him, and in so doing, cut the cruel thread of fate the gods have woven for you. Atun-Shei lifted the mighty dagger, half buried beneath the ashes of Dakaru the Builder. He drew it from its scabbard. His eyes he fixed upon Hethsmet, who was overcome with fear and sadness. Father Enlil, the Hill Lord said, and wept from his eyes, I have lived for you, and so I shall die for you. Al-Azul's red eyes glittered with glee. Yes, yes! Kill him, Homemaker! Do it now! So it came to pass that with a mighty shout and a crushing blow, Atun-Shei thrust the dagger of Enlil, the greatest blade that ever was or will be forged, into the heart of Al-Azul, whom mortals call the Emperor. Golden blood cascaded from the grievous wound. Black fire enveloped the engorged body of Al-Azul. There was no time for last words. He staggered back through the casement, which shattered, and then he plummeted off his tower, shrieking his agony all the way down. Of the Flight to the Moon. So it came to pass that Al-Azul fell, and upon the moment of his death the tower shook and buckled, the mortar melted, the bricks crumbled and broke. The high hall of the throne room collapsed, and the Vendelin soldiers fell into the abyss or were crushed by falling stone. But Enlil was with Atun-Shei and Hethsmet, and as the floor dropped from under them, and the tower plunged downward, exploding spectacularly, they ascended up further than any bird has ever flown. Into the very firmament they floated, clutching each other, passing by stars and constellations, until at length they lighted down upon the grey, stony face of Nana, the moon. Nana himself was there to greet them, in the form of a man. He sat upon the wall of a well, and within the well were the waters of creation. There too was Iska, in the form of a bull. His neck was rubbed raw and bleeding, and in the dust beside him was a broken collar of copper. Nana spoke. Your quest is accomplished, and your patron Iska redeemed from slavery. Only one task remains to you. You must relinquish the dagger of Enlil, for it has served its purpose. Drop it in the well, and return its power to he who bestowed it to you, Enlil, lord of the land and the air, the father of the gods. Atun-Shei was aghast. You cannot ask this of me after all that I have done, he said. In my travels I have learned something of my fate, betrayal and desolation. What use will kingship be to me then? Armed with the dagger, I might save myself. Hethsmet said, Al-Azul spoke lies, my friend. He named me as your murderer. How could this be? I would never betray you. I swear it upon the spirits of my ancestors. Nana, the moon, became stern. I warn you, Atun-Shei. The dagger of Enlil is imbued with great power, too much power for any one man. Relinquish it, or it shall turn on you, and bring about the fate you fear so much. The warrior who carries the dagger into battle cannot be defeated, Atun-Shei said. Enki told me himself. The dagger is mine by right, and it shall be the scepter with which I rule. That was how Atun-Shei turned away from the gods, and sealed his fate. Of the Battle of Ook. While the course of destiny was being decided in the throne room of Al-Azul, a desperate battle had raged far below in the city of Ook. The 5 Arasi companions had entered through the eastern gate and snuck into the work camps of the slaves. There they freed the strongest and ablest of them, who quickly released the others. Soon they were armed with clubs and rocks, and in great numbers rose up against their slavers. The Vendelin soldiers of Al-Azul retreated to their gatehouses and pulled up the ladders. Wave after wave of slaves attacked the gatehouses, repelled by arrows and javelins, until mighty Naphatim, the last of the giants, joined the fray. He crushed the beams of the gatehouses with his fists, and brought them crashing down one by one. The Venderlin he slaughtered to a man. Their race was extinguished that day. By the time the last gatehouse had fallen, no less than 40 spears and 400 arrows pierced the flesh of the giant. As he lay dying, he and the Arassi watched the tower come toppling down, and heard the jubilant cries of victory from the throats of free men who were slaves no more. Of the death of Atun-Shei. So it came to pass that 7 kingships descended upon 7 cities, and the 7 sages ruled them. Atun-Shei was given Eridu, the greatest of the 7. Hethsmet was given Kish. The other 5 cities were Ur, Larsa, Zimbir, Shurupak, and Bad Tabiria. Ereshkigal, the mistress of the dead, bore Atun-Shei 7 children from the wombs of each of her 7 aspects. 4 sons and 3 daughters there were. They and their children, and their children's children, spread the knowledge of May to every corner of the world, as Enlil had decreed. Many years passed, and Atun-Shei grew old. His flesh puckered, the light in his eyes dimmed, his beard grew thin, and his hair white. As his body deteriorated, so did his honor. He became bitter, mistrustful, and cruel. As an old man, Atun-Shei possessed unimaginable riches, and all the comforts of the court, yet knew not one happy day. The people of Eridu whispered that he was transforming into the very tyrant he had overthrown in his youth. The truth was that his most prized treasure, the dagger of Enlil, no longer answered to him. It spurned him like a faithless lover. Its magic had long since faded, its hilt repugnant to his spotted old hand. Above all things, Atun-Shei feared losing the dagger. He kept the blade of power in a heavy golden chest, and carried it about with him, night and day. When he heard some courtiers whispering, he had them tortured, convinced they were plotting to steal it. Soon, he even suspected his most loyal guards of some treachery, and dismissed them from his service. For years, he remained alone within his chambers, with the doors sealed shut, and would not come out, not even to hold court. The business of kingship was left to inept viziers. Crops died, famines struck, plague spread. The people cried out for deliverance. It was not long before a deliverer came. He was of Atun-Shei's own blood, as was foretold, his youngest son by Ereshkigal, who was called Amukar. The young prince was far travelled, and had lived roughly upon the road, and listened to the petitions of the people, while his siblings squabbled over the succession. Amukar was convinced that Eridu would never be ruled justly while his father lived, so he took a journey to each of the 6 cities, seeking allies. 5 of the 7 sages joined his cause, and together the old kings went with Amukar to Kish to treat with King Hethsmet. So it came to pass that Amukar besought Hethsmet to join with him, and told him that for the good of all people nourished by the waters of the 2 rivers, his father, Atun-Shei, king of Eridu, Enlil's champion, beloved of Ereshkigal and Isker's chosen, must needs die. Would that this were an unfavourable dream, Hethsmet told Amukar. What was foreseen has come to pass at last. I see now that Al-Azul was right. Amukar, you ask me to slay my lord, my friend, my brother, and destiny has left me no choice but to oblige you. But first, boy, you must make a promise to me. When Atun-Shei is dead and the dagger is in your hands, you must sail upon a boat to the deepest part of the sea, and there you must cast the blade of power into the deepest depths. Swear you will do this, and swear it upon your honor. Amukar was much pained to hear this, for he secretly coveted the dagger for himself. This promise he made, but did not intend to keep. So it came to pass that Amukar and his 6 kingly companions came to the forest beside Eridu. Since Atun-Shei had not been seen outside his chambers in some years, Amukar devised a scheme to draw him out, which was this. He came to his father and announced that King Hethsmet had arrived to do him homage outside the city walls. Atun-Shei was no fool, and the curse of Matsine had weighed heavily upon his mind for some time, but when he heard the name of his brother-in-arms, the years fell away for him. His heart softened, and desired nothing more but to see his friend one last time. So he hastened from the palace, taking nothing but the chest that contained the dagger of Enlil. Amukar directed him to the place in the forest where the 6 were waiting, and thus the 7 sages were reunited for the last time. As soon as Atun-Shei looked with his eyes and saw the mournful countenances of his old friends, he knew his death had come, for he had seen that very moment in his dreams. 6 arrows sprang from 6 bows, and found their mark within the body of Atun-Shei. Hethsmet's arrow was deadliest, and pierced Atun-Shei through his heart. Yet the homemaker king did not die on the spot. He fled deep into the forest, and what became of him and the dagger, no one knows. There are many caves in the forest near Eridu, as all know, and it is said he crawled into one to die, clutching his treasure to his last breath. Many peasants of this region claim that the tomb of Atun-Shei is within the cave of Batshigur, just south of the village of that name. They say the cave is haunted, and none who enter ever return. The truth is, no one knows even unto this day where the tomb lies. So it came to pass that Atun-Shei died as was foretold, ignobly at the height of his power. So it came to pass also that the dagger of Enlil was lost forever. The world shall never see so great a hero, or so mighty a weapon, ever again. He rose up from nothing, and through brave deeds became a demigod. He redeemed Isker from slavery, and freed humanity from a tyrant. He brought May down from heaven, and gifted it to the world. But lo, Atun-Shei lies now in the tomb. He will not come again.
Eshkalamba karinda shuaba shurinda karamba kanichta Antica Badaba